Well, man. It's been a long time since I've talked to you.
Been a minute. How's life going?
Lots of changes. Not as fun as when you and Lance and myself were working together, but life moves on, man.
Comes at you fast and
How's everything at Bear?
good. Lots of work.
Do you like it though?
I do. Yep. Keeps me busy. Like the work we do. And yeah, every day is a different day.
Not gonna lie, I still miss it. That sucks getting let go from a company. It's hard on the soul. I really enjoyed working there.
With every challenge brings a new beginning. It's kind of how I look at it. So sounds like you landed on your feet, doing well, got the podcast rolling again. Apps all
Trying to.
launched.
So you've been at Bear for what, a year now?
Been about a year and a half.
Year and
My
a half already.
2-year anniversary will be July of 25.
Man, time goes by fast.
Feel like a seasoned vet.
What is your role there exactly?
I am a sustainable systems agronomist, so a lot of regenerative, sustainable ag work, promoting things like no-till, cover crops, strip till, nitrogen reduction, stuff like that. So yeah, it's been good.
How are the farmers handling that? Is there a lot of uptick in some of these carbon programs?
I think there is. I mean, with commodity prices so low, every dollar counts. So I think farmers are kind of looking at where they can maybe cut back on some traditional stuff they've done, but also earn some money while doing it. So it's been well. Of course, all these practices are just good in nature. I mean, it's not just all about the money, but it can do a lot for their soil and their operation. So,
What states are you covering now?
28 states, pretty much from California all the way to South Carolina. Not everything's obviously eligible in
You're
between, but
you're covering 28 states?
I'm not. Well, we provide support for all 28 states, so we have, I'd say, our grower facing team is probably 15 people. So we do a lot of the one on one, face to face type stuff, but obviously we can't be everywhere at once and everybody lives in different places. So a lot of it's phone conversations, but we try to meet face to face if we can. Yeah, we went from 12 states to 28. So we got a lot of ground to cover, but it's a good opportunity for a lot of people.
Picking up any hunting ground in some of these other states?
No hunting ground. I don't even know if I can afford to go to these other states, which fortunately I was able to get draw my Iowa tag this last fall. So that was exciting, very successful. So it was definitely worth the wait.
Lance told me about it, said you kind of got, always tells me about your silver spoon. He must have had one pattern for you and it just worked out perfect.
Yep, Lance was very instrumental in that. Of course, shout out to cell cameras. Some people like them, some people don't. But I'm just one of those. I utilize the technology that is legal and that we have. Without the lone cell cam picture that we had that day, it could be a different ending to how my Iowa season went. But definitely gave us the heads up of kind of where he was. So I was able to make a move, and we can definitely go into that later if you want.
We can go into it now. How did it all play down? Were you planning on just taking a week off, or you got some pictures of him and you and Lance just said, let's go get him?
So Lance had been getting pictures of this deer, early fall. He was kind of the number one deer on those farms. So I had initially planned to take a 2-week vacation, huntcation, try to bounce between Missouri, Iowa. If I struck out in Iowa, I'd go to Missouri and vice versa. I'd actually been hunting that spot the 2 days prior to when we got the cell camera picture. And we had other pictures of him, but he wasn't really patternable. No pictures during those 2 days. I saw a lot of deer, I just didn't see him. A day went by. So the day after, I was actually out hanging a camera in Missouri, and we got this picture probably like 7:30 in the morning. And Lance had a pretty good idea of where he might bed. So instead of going to that same spot, I said, you know what? I'm taking the rest of the day off. I just will try it. He's got to be close. It was still pretty warm, mid-October. It wasn't hot, but it wasn't cold either. So I decided to pack my stuff up, shower up, get cleaned up, and head east. His gut instinct paid off. I sat a stand that he said you just will try it. You know, if he's kind of in between, there's a good chance you might see him. Got there about 2:30. Got in the stand. Of course, forgot my safety harness. It was an old stand, kind of that typical, like, whatever. I just didn't, but I was in such a hurry that I forgot I have an extra cell phone that I was going to start recording my hunts again. So, like, the 3 days prior, had it all set up. Like, man, if he comes through, this would be great. Forgot the cell phone to record, and I had my safety harness with me. I was just in such a hurry. I was so jacked up. I put on my camo, grabbed my bow, got on my e-bike, headed out, got to the stand. I'm like, well, there's no turning back now. Luckily, it wasn't super high, but anytime I'm in a stand without a safety harness, I'm a little skeptical, but it is what it is. Some people might have turned back, but I waited 6 years for the tag. The time was right. Whatever. I took it at my own risk. I only saw one deer prior, was feeding behind me on some acorns, and then about 5:30 hit, saw a beautiful 9 point come straight to me, hit a trail about 6 yards. Of course, being from Missouri, we have good deer, but of course we have the rifle season during the rut. So if that first deer had been in Missouri, I probably wouldn't have passed it, but I knew what it was still early. I wasn't going to settle. And then probably 10 minutes later, here comes a rack right over the ridge, made a scrape, rubbed the tree. It was beautiful. And of course, the whole time I'm like, why did I not have my camera? It would have been beautiful.
That's how it works, man.
Yeah. He hit the trail at 6 yards, followed that same buck, and he was so close and the angle was so steep, which I'm not going to make an excuse for my shot, but every time I shoot a deer, I immediately question it if I don't see him go down. Well, the weird thing was I shot him and he took off, but it got quiet very quickly. So my first thought was, okay, he just ran far enough. I just lost my hearing of, you know, because he got so far. So I called Lance, told him what happened. He's like, do not walk in the same way you came, which would have been, I don't know, 300 yards. So I ended up walking probably 3/4 of a mile or a mile all the way back around the property, right by the stand I had hunted 3 days prior. Of course, sleepless night, stewing, questioned my shot. We even thought about calling a tracker because I was like, I don't want to take the chance. I've spent the money. I've waited this long. Let's just call a dog. Well, we decided not to. Let's just see what happens. We get there the next morning. Within the first 5 minutes, I bet he didn't go 60 yards. So when I thought maybe he ran too far to where I couldn't hear him anymore, he piled up within 60 yards. And of course, looking back at it now, I could have been celebrating that night.
Instead of not sleeping.
Yeah. Yep. I think I might have got to sleep by 2:30 in the morning, and we were up by about 5:30. So successful hunt, 170 class deer, kind of what dreams are made of. Hardwood, Iowa timber. Wasn't the rut. I mean, it's probably selfish to say I kind of wish it would have played out a little longer because that build up over 6 years, you wait for a tag like that. You don't want it to be over so soon, but at the same time, I'm not going to complain. That was everything I could have asked for. Appreciate Lance, letting me hunt on their private ground, and a good friend, allowing me to harvest a deer of that caliber. There's not a lot of
His
people that
biggest
probably let you
deer.
do that. Yep, exactly.
What time of day was it? Right at
Uh,
sunset?
it was 5:30, so at that time there was still probably hour and a half left to light, so it was
Really?
pretty early. Yeah.
And you didn't see him go down, huh? Was it over a ridge?
He went below me, so I had the high ground, but the leaves were still very heavy, and it was just so loaded with timber that where he ran to, I mean, within 40 yards, I lost eyesight. Had I been able to see 20, 30 yards further, I could have seen him go down. But, his instinct was right because where I set up was between two water sources. So it's kind of warm. We thought, well, maybe he'll get a drink, bed down. There was a pond behind me. Thought, well, maybe he'll get up, go get another drink. And yeah, I couldn't have pictured that going any better. I would have never thought I would have tagged out mid-October, but it's the way hunting goes. I mean, a lot of it's luck, but the
Big
instinct was right.
percentage.
So, yeah.
Did you have any luck in Missouri?
I had a lot of good deer. I didn't have anything great. I probably have 4 or 5 deer that needed another year, and I didn't want to settle. It kind of helps when you already have one deer tagged that you're very happy with. I didn't want to just shoot a deer just to say, hey, I shot 2 deer in 2 states. So the future's looking good for this year. But in all honesty, I didn't really have a shot other than maybe one time, and it would have been a questionable shot. So I refrained from doing that. Let them grow. We'll see what makes it through.
How long have you been bow hunting?
So I started deer hunting at, I believe it was 11 years old. Kind of Missouri. That was when you got to take your hunter safety certification, got that passed. I was obsessed with deer hunting before that, but I was just looking through the lens of other people. Grew up just your typical deer drives, Missouri rifle season. Of course, when you're younger, that's all fun. It still is fun, but as you have higher goals at some point, like I do, it just got kind of old. I didn't see much challenge in it. I didn't really have a mentor. So some people grow up, they have someone that introduced them to bow hunting. I would say my biggest influence was I remember we used to have snow days during school. So I would bust out all the old Realtree VHS tapes, Bill Jordan, Michael Waddell, David Blanton, and I just kept watching those. I'm like, man, that'd be so cool to take a big buck with a bow. So I think I got one for Christmas, my birthday. I can't remember. I would say I first started bow hunting probably when I was 13 or 14. I was learning on my own, so I wasn't really taking it
Mm-hmm.
that serious. I'd go out, even sometimes sit in a lawn chair, tucked back in the weeds, thinking I was going to kill something big, which
Surprised you didn't.
it's fine to think now, but um, I didn't really get bored of it, but I didn't have the success I thought I would, so I still bow hunted, but I didn't really get serious until probably I'd say senior year or my college days is when I really started to pick it back up. And honestly, I've come to enjoy more of the process. Obviously I love having giant antlers in my hands, but the food plots, the scouting, the trail cameras, the preparation, I think I almost enjoy that as much as I do actually hunting.
Did you have any buddies when you got started bow hunting to kind of show you the ropes, setting up tree stands, all that good stuff, or just kind of learned it on your own?
I would say I started out on my own, but I used to hunt with some buddies that started to get more serious. I kind of learned from them, took some tips, and then I wouldn't say I'm totally self-taught, but I eventually just kind of took the reins myself and it was more independent. I wasn't relying on folks to show me how to do stuff. Once I saw it once, I tried to do it myself and learn that way because I'm very much a visual learner and more of I will learn better if I do it versus watching somebody. So I would say mid to late college years is when I really started to kind of explore on my own, do my own thing. Of course, I had a lot of friends that helped me along the way. I mean, they're just as much part of my success than me just doing it on my own. But yeah, I don't really have like a mentor that opened my eyes to this world of bow hunting, showed me the ropes. It was more kind of learn on my own type of thing.
How long did it take you to start having success? You kill a lot of nice deer now. When did it start clicking?
I would say, don't quote me, but I want to say it was 2008 or 2009. I took my first really good deer, and it all kind of came together. Thinking back where I hung the stand, why I hung it there, when I hunted, paying attention to the weather, the wind direction. Yeah, was that 15, 16 years ago? It finally kind of clicked, and I learned something new every year. I'll never be an expert. I'll never claim to be, but I feel like I can always get better. Like every year, even though I've hunted some farms for 10 plus years, I always learn something new or during shed season, hey, I've never really scouted this that hard, or maybe I've ignored a spot. Maybe I'm missing something over here. So I would say 15 years ago, I really started to kind of hone it in and keep building on those principles that help me have success today.
Then you killed a giant a couple years later in Iowa.
That was 2015. And again, every hunt that I go on, I'm not going to say, oh, it was all because of what I did. That's part of it, but at the end of the day, the deer still has to walk by. I mean, the minute you think you have it figured out, they do something, as you know, completely different. So that really drove me to say go big. I mean, I'm never going to pass up a mature deer, but I've really dialed it back and seen the potential they could have and try to instill that discipline of, you could really shoot that deer and hey, you tagged a nice 150 or whatever, which is a great deer. But if they're 4 years old, you just picture what they can be one more year. So I've really tried to refrain from, just shooting something to say I punched the tag. I want to try to see if they can reach that maximum potential.
That's a pretty cool story too. I would kind of relate that a little bit to waiting 6 years to draw for Iowa, because didn't you move to Iowa to hunt at that point in your bachelor days, and it all just kind of came together?
Yep, my job was actually in Iowa, so I found a buddy where we found a spot in Iowa, convinced him, hey, got him into bow hunting pretty hard. Said, hey, if we move here, it's pretty much in the middle for both of us, and we can open that opportunity to see what dreams are made of. And I had a friend that was very instrumental in that too. Without him, I wouldn't have got permission on the ground that I had. But that was a lot of luck. I mean, moved up there like July 1st, waited the 90 days, went through the whole process of becoming a resident. So really, I didn't get to do much until October-ish. And I think I only had 3 sits in. And where we hung the stand, I mean, it was along a good travel corridor, but I didn't really have much history. There was not much intel. It was more of, this looks like a good spot. I'm just going to hang a stand, see what happens. And, that's where that deer behind me came from, which I'll never forget. I'm sure it'll be my biggest deer I'll ever shoot, but I don't take it for granted. I mean, it's never just something I did. There's always someone else that has a hand in the success.
Weren't you planning on going somewhere else and you saw a combine?
Yeah, so that farm, it sat off of a gravel road, obviously, like most do. But my plan was to head to a different farm that was all CRP. And at the time, to be honest, I'm like, it just looks better. It wasn't a huge farm, but there was a farm just to the north of it that was landlocked by this farm, but they had a mutual agreement. Obviously, the farmer could access for this guy's field to combine. It was like 40 acres behind it. Standing corn. Well, I actually drove past the entrance of this farm, saw that he was pulling in to go combine. So I just made a random decision that I'm going to turn around and who knows, he might kick something out. So I walk back there. It's kind of nice because, it kind of takes the attention off you walking in, hides the noise. And to find out the guy was a one-man show, he would pick his corn, the hopper would get full, he'd unload it onto a truck, drive it to the bin, come back, repeat. So he was making noise all night. I thought I made the wrong decision. I'm like, man, this guy's just causing a ruckus. But it was probably 30 to 45 minutes before dark. Hadn't seen anything. I just happened to catch some movement. Like I was kind of down in a low spot. So where I walked in, you'd be looking up the ridge. Well, it was standing beans where I was at. So heck, he's combining corn. I got standing beans in front of me. Why not? Well, as soon as I threw the binos up, I couldn't even tell how big it was. I was just like, that is no brainer. A shooter. Put him down, grabbed the antlers, crashed them together as loud as I could because I was still fighting the combine noise. And I grabbed my bow and I just waited. Well, here comes this deer. Not knowing he had a drop time, nothing. I just saw the mass and I thought, yeah, if he gives me a shot, I'm going to take it. He gets to the tree line, stays out about 40 yards. I couldn't shoot. And he just keeps walking. I mean, not even stopping. And I tried to grunt. I tried to make any kind of noise to get him interested. Well, at that point, I'm pretty deflated. I was like, well, that didn't work. He kept walking north, of course, where the guy is combining. Well, he happened to be combining back towards me. So that deer just stopped, and I watched him. He was just looking at the combine the whole time. So had that guy not been there, he probably would have just kept going north. So I'm guessing the guy kicked him out. He made a huge circle. I rattled. He comes in. So he stops, turns around, and I was grunting. I don't know if he turned around because I was doing that or if he was just like, "Oh, I'm not going back the same way I came." No idea. Well, lo and behold, he hits a trail that was perfect. It was cleared out 20 yards and pop. And I watched him fall over, and I can't even tell you what was going through my mind because I had no idea how big he was at the time. I got down real fast and probably within 20 yards, and I saw him laying there, and I immediately called the buddy to help me get permission. I was like, "You need to come here." I mean, I was almost afraid to call because of how big this deer was. And he was super pumped. I mean, but when you're just like, "Holy crap, I just shot a giant," you don't want that person to be mad. But he was super happy, helped me load him up. I mean, I can't give him thanks enough. But something I'm never going to forget, probably never going to happen again, just all the variables that went into that hunt. It was crazy. Pure luck. Never had a picture of that deer. Didn't even know he existed.
Had you been hunting that farm?
I can't remember if I had hunted that one time before or if that was the first time in. Either way, I was just kind of hunting blind. I mean, it was Iowa, it was October, and I actually took off work that day, hunted a different spot that morning, had really good deer movement. But for some reason, I'm like, I'm just going to go to a different spot. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of the wind. I honestly can't remember why I decided to not hunt the same spot I hunted that morning because I had a pretty decent deer that morning. I don't know. It was just pure luck.
What percentage do you think? What percentage do you think revolves around luck versus skill of the hunter?
If you ask 10 different people, they'd give you 10 different answers.
That's why I'm asking everybody.
So you've asked other people this, and they've given you an answer.
Porter gave me an answer.
I'm just going to throw a number out that 70 to 80% is pure luck.
See, Porter said 90. I think it's 75 to 80. You definitely have to be a really good hunter to be able to capitalize on the deal, stuff like that. But you can't kill a big deer unless you have them in front of you. And there's a lot of stuff that can go wrong. There's a lot of things that have to go right for you to kill a big deer.
Yeah, and me 20 years ago, 15 years ago, who knows, I might have found the first tree that looked good, threw up a stand, and prayed for the rest. I mean, you still have to put yourself in the wheelhouse, at least to have an opportunity. And that's something I've learned over the years. You know, you think you have the best spot in the world, and then you scout, you find a tore up spot. You're like, I've missed this the entire time. And they can change year to year, but I mean, they still have to do what you think they're going to do, which I think is a huge part of it. So I would say you do have to be skilled. And some guys get lucky, some girls get lucky, whatever. But if you're out of the game, you're hunting field edges all the time, which I've shot deer on the field edge, but the more years I've hunted, I've realized how much I probably missed over the years by don't dare walk in the woods. You're going to bump everything and scare everything out, and you've probably missed everything.
Yeah, I hunt field edges just because of the property I hunt. It's small and there's no way I could get a shot off in there. But to add on that, there's definitely some people that have an knack for finding big deer. But another thing that heavily influences the size of deer people shoot is money.
The more podcasts, the more videos I watch, you know, it used to be like, don't dare step foot in the sanctuary or wherever. And I think over the years, I've gotten more aggressive. I might do some hanging hunts. I might place a stand right in the thick of it, thinking that one time when the time is right, I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to jump in there. I'm going to sit all day, whatever it takes. And I wouldn't have done that 15 years ago. Like, well, deer bedding over there, whatever. I'm just going to stay way out here. And then I never get a shot. Now, sometimes it can bite you in the rear, but I think we give deer more credit than they should as far as, well, if you bump them out, they're never coming back, because I don't think that's true, you know, as I've learned over the years. But you don't want to do it too much, but I think there is a benefit to being aggressive and diving in the thick of it if you need to.
You know, I would agree. People think instantly you spook a deer and you'll never see it again, but I disagree with that. They might change their patterns a little bit. They might avoid a certain area, but for the most part, they're probably still going to be around somewhere.
And I think there's a lot to say. Like I listened to, do you know who Andre DeQuisto is? So I find it fascinating. Of course, he's a living legend. I would never get to that level. But just taking tips from him as far as being aggressive when I need to. Not that I'm going to hang and hunt and do the bump and dump every single time. But when you think about it, if you bump a deer out of his bed, you think they're gone forever. But if you bump them out of their bed or their safe spot, they exited cleanly, especially if you're just scouting, poking around, they're going to assume that worked. I should go back there because I got out unscathed. I think there's a lot to that. Not that I want to do it all the time, but if you're just sitting back waiting all the time, I think you're missing opportunities. And like you said, where you hunt, that may not be feasible because terrain comes into account. I mean, flat land, like no trees. Well, obviously, you're not just going to walk into the 1 5 acre thicket that's there every single time because you're not going to have any success.
If you think about it, if a deer has this safe spot for 4 years and he gets bumped out of it once, is he going to leave the countryside completely? Now, if you stick an arrow in him and whatnot, maybe, but I mean, last year I shot high on that 150-inch deer and he was showing up on camera 2 days later. How often does that happen? Quite a bit.
And think how many times they get bumped out by coyotes or some kind of noise that spooks them out of there that we don't see, we don't know of, and they're still there. And to your point of every deer is different. You might have a deer that gets stuck with an arrow, you might never see him again. Then you have the ones with the personalities of I'm still alive, I'm still kicking, they go right back 2 days later. Like no one deer is like the rest. It just depends.
Yeah, in a perfect scenario, you would never want to be seen. But think of all the times, I know since I hunt a smaller property, how many times you bump deer walking out and they come back out and start feeding 15 minutes later. Obviously, a big buck's a lot different, but like you said, people give deer too much credit. And there are deer that are super smart. They might see you once and never come out in the daylight again. Most of them aren't as smart as people think they are.
It's just their personality.
Yeah, they're a lot smarter than I am, but
Yeah, if they were that dumb, we'd all kill giant bucks on the first sit. But yeah, just you can't assume your whole hunting knowledge off of one deer because in your scenario, you might do that the next year. Again, you'll never see that deer again, but you might have one that shows up 2 days later and leaves you scratching your head. But that's what keeps us chasing these animals.
the deer I shot this year showed up 4 or 5 years in a row, pictures, and this is just a 40-acre timber where it's hard to keep deer around. And he just liked being in front of the camera, like being out in the daytime, but I never saw him face to face. And he was a lot more, how do I say this, extroverted than a lot of big bucks, even though he was getting a lot of attention. You could have a deer do the same thing, disappear after a couple years, never show up in the daylight. So they're all a little bit different.
And kind of going back to, we're talking about how you got started hunting, things like that. And I talked about just the process. Obviously, I'm not tall, I'm not fast, I'm not a pro athlete. So this is my go-to. There's just something about targeting a specific deer, and it's almost personal because every time they get by you, it ticks you off more and more because you're like, I'm smarter than you, yet they're still walking. So I think that's what drives me a lot is I get older, I have different goals. Before it was just, hey, I killed one with my bow. That was the goal. And everybody has different goals, different states. You're not going to shoot a 150 every year in Michigan or wherever else where they have high pressure. the genetics just aren't there, the population's not there. But I don't know. It's something I look forward to every year. It's like as much stress, but at the same time, when you get that gratification when you finally seal the deal, I think that's what just keeps me going.
Yeah. I mean, people will bash us, "Oh, you're just trying to kill animals and stuff like that." But like you said, it's more about the chase and the process. For people who don't understand, it's no different than somebody trying to collect their Pokemons, whatever. Like, they gotta have them all. They're after one specific Pokemon, and they're just crazy about that. They gotta find it. Or if they're collecting something else and they're looking for a specific Beanie Baby, for example, for like 2 years. I know you don't kill the Beanie Babies, but it's the same thing. It's like a challenge that just there's something in our brains wired like this. We got to accept this challenge. This deer's been beating us for a couple of years. The more time you put into it and it doesn't work out, you just kind of drives you a little bit more.
And we're all different. We all tick different. We all have different hobbies. We all have different goals. Love eating deer meat, but it's the chase to me. It's the challenge. Like I want to prove that I can set out to do something that I plan to do, and especially when you get a big 5, 6, 7 year old whatever deer, and you put them on the ground, like you've accomplished something. People that don't hunt, they don't understand that. And again, in other states, they're not even allowed to get that old because they have so many hunters. There's just something about the strategy I think I like the most. Like, okay, it's preseason or even during season, nothing better I like than October, going out, the leaves are changing, hanging stands, strategizing with friends, bringing other people into it. Like, hey, what do you think? You know, I can do it on my own, but I always value other people's opinions. Like, if you were me, what would you do? And I think that's how everybody learns. Like, you can't know everything. Maybe someone gives you an idea of something you didn't think of that ends up being the reason you kill that deer. I just think all that process is so cool.
Well, we're older. Hunting isn't as much of a priority as it was 15 years ago. It's nice to just kind of get away and not have everything else on your mind. And there'll be times where something happens where I just sit there with a big grin on my face, like if a couple fawns are screwing around under my tree stand, acting like dog with zoomies, weird stuff, it just kind of puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, you get to see a part of nature that you don't get to see when you're driving down the road if you're not in it. I think last fall, so fall of 23, I've hunted for, I don't know, let's just say 20 plus years. And that's the first time I've ever actually seen a bobcat in the stand. You would think
Really?
that many years, that many hours in the stand, but that's the first time I've ever actually seen a bob. And he was chasing something. It was just cool to watch. He wasn't very big, but you just get to see a lot of cool stuff in nature that it's not always just about killing something. Like you said, just sitting there, taking it all in, seeing the sunrise, seeing the sunset, seeing the woods come alive in the morning. A lot of people don't get to experience that. They just think you're out hunting, you're just trying to kill something. Well, that's not the case. It's kind of your peaceful place, your
You
happy
know,
place.
can you think back to is there any one situation where in your earlier years of hunting, something like you, something happened where it just clicked and you were hooked? Is there a certain memory? Like I can think back to a specific hunt where it just kind of hooked me. Whereas like first time I got out during the rut and saw just like deer blazing through chasing. Can you think of any situations from your earlier years that just kind of hooked you?
Yeah, I'd say probably it's when I shot my first good buck in 2008 or 9. I'd have to look, but it's just an old cattle pasture. Set the stand up where I thought deer would move. And that's when I still hunted out of like ladder stands. I hadn't even really gone. I mean, I had hang ons, but that was still when ladder stands were still kind of a thing, which they got a lot of new technology now, but I just still prefer a hang on. I had put my bow on the pull up rope and I had taken one step onto the ladder and a doe blew and stood up probably 20 yards from me. So I froze. but she looked the other way. Like, this is weird. Like, you obviously stood up because you heard, saw, smell, whatever. So I stood there for probably 15 or 20 minutes. It felt like 2 hours. So I finally just made the decision. I'm just going to sneak up because I couldn't see anything else. I didn't want to scare her off because it was November time frame. I'm like, oh, this is a live decoy. So I slowly made my way up the stand, pulled my bow up. She still stood there looking the other way. So I finally got my bow in hand just in case. I didn't know what was going on. Probably after I stood there for another 20 or 30 minutes, that whole time, that buck finally stood up. I never saw him. He was hunkered down. She was obviously worried about him. I don't know why she wasn't looking at me because that was the reason she stood up. I mean, he stood up and I just, he looked like a giant. I mean, he was still a good high 140s deer. At the time, I'm like, holy crap, that's a giant. And he kind of started wading through the weeds. He was probably only 10 yards from her, but when you just see a giant rack just kind of bobbing through the brush, it just makes him look even bigger. Well, she took off and I stopped him, 20-yard shot. Had to recover him the next day, but after that, I'm like, that was freaking awesome. Like,
You
that is
killed
the
him?
power. Yep. But that was the power of the rut. Like, if that was any other time, would that have happened? Probably not. But because of the rut and they're so locked down with does, she was apparently worried about what he was going to do. Had that not been that time frame, that probably wouldn't have happened. But I was like, that was insane. Like, I literally walked within 20 yards of these bedded deer. I'm sure he saw me, smelled me, something. I mean, he wasn't far from her looking back at it. I'm like, that's the power of the rut. Like, they literally don't care about anything. He had that doe, he could care less. And I mean, that was the reason I killed that deer. Had that doe not been there and he was just there by himself, he probably would have just darted off. But that's when I really got hooked. I'm like, that, I want more of that.
Isn't it amazing how we're coming up on 20 years. I think it was about 2007 or 8 when I killed my first 140, 150, and I can still remember it like the back of my hand, like every single detail. And that's, I think, why people get hooked on hunting, like you just said. It's stuff you don't forget.
Absolutely. I mean, I can probably say I've been fortunate enough to shoot a lot of good deer. But for some reason, the misses are what I remember more. You always replay those back in your head. What could you have done better? And they just sting because all you can think about is the other deer you could have had on your wall, even though they were great experiences, but you just kick yourself.
As you said that, it kind of came to my mind as you think, like, all these deer you could have had, but think about all the deer you have just out of plain stupid luck. I mean, it can go. It's like the Chiefs winning all these one score games, man.
Let's go.
They could easily have lost all those one score games.
Yeah, it's like it's not on the same stage, but I imagine what we feel when we miss, let's just say, an absolute giant. Bad shot, don't recover, or whatever, is almost like losing the Super Bowl. Would you have rather just not even had that happen?
That's a good question. It's good to happen because that's how you learn. But it's depressing, man. That deer I missed last year, he is probably 150, and he showed up on camera this August on the neighbors. Oh my God, he's just a giant. Probably pushing 170-inch 8-pointer, but he disappeared. But that's kind of what drives you too, because nobody wants to feel like a loser. Like, man, I messed that up. So what do I need to do to be better?
Yeah, it's how you fix your mistakes and just hope that you're prepared the next time. I mean, I don't shoot as much as I should, but every year get dialed in. But I don't think you can compensate for the moment of truth. You can go out and shoot your bow and shorts, cut off t-shirts, whatever. Yep, dialed in and got it. But there's nothing that prepares you for that moment of truth. You can't mimic that adrenaline. You can't mimic the situation. It's totally different. So I mean, even the best shooters in the world have had screw ups. If you don't screw up at some point during your hunting career, you're either not hunting enough or no, that's basically the only reason that I can come up with. I mean, it's going to happen at some point. I can't think of anybody that's like, I'm 100%, I've never missed a deer or lost a deer because of a bad shot. I mean, it's going to happen.
I'm looking back to that one I shot high last year, and it was probably the first nice buck I shot at in 4 years. But once that adrenaline kicks in, you just don't think clearly. I remember pulling back on him, getting him stopped, and just letting the arrow go. When in reality, I should have been more patient. Like, okay, what do I need to do? I'm high in the tree. Do I need to compensate for the sharp angle? But you just don't think it's clear because all that adrenaline just gets to you, man.
It's like any successful harvest or not. It's hard to remember exactly what went through your mind. Like even my bad shots, I can replay most of it, but you can't replay exactly what was going through your mind. You can say woulda, shoulda, coulda, but I mean that's adrenaline. That's why we do it.
Do you ever feel like you're patient enough when it comes to the shot? A deer comes in, you pull back, feel like you're settled in, or you like me and tend to rush things a little too much?
I've had both. I've had the ones where I've felt very good and I'm like smoked, but there's other times I've rushed it. Two of my biggest deer that I never recovered was because I know I didn't take enough time or didn't range enough that I should have or made assumptions I shouldn't have. Like, oh, he's basically right there. It should be about 35. Maybe he was 39, which doesn't sound like a lot, but at that yardage, 2, 3 inches can make the difference.
And I think the only way to get rid of that is shooting a lot of deer. If you don't put yourself in that situation, you can't compare target practice to pulling on a live deer.
And even back in, it was 2016, 170-inch deer. It was a fairly long shot. It was probably pushing 40, mid 40s. I really didn't have a choice. Tried to stop him. He was dogging a doe. I mean, I felt comfortable with the shot, but I probably got a little bit of target panic and just felt like I didn't have as much time as I probably did. And even from that point forward, I'm like, I'm not going to let that happen again. And it happened 3 years later. Shot low. I mean, both deer lived. They were fine. They weren't bad shots.
Were they big?
That one was 170, and the one in 2019 was probably mid 80s. So
At least you get to see deer that big. That's got to count for something, right?
where I hunt, it's probably similar to where you hunt. It's probably not as flat, but there's just not a lot of timber. I mean, I try to find those spots that people overlook, or that's like 2 acres of timber and, a ditch with a creek. Those deer got to live somewhere. I mean, you try to find where they're not pressured and they feel comfortable. It doesn't matter if it's 100 acres or 5. And that was the case on the one in 2019. I literally turned him around because I snort wheezed. Came right in down the trail, wanted him to, ranged the spot at like 33. Well, he kind of veered off when I shot. So looking back, he was probably like 37, 38. And I know I rushed it. I did because I had a small window. Clipped the white of his belly. I mean, we're talking 2 inches. He's probably a dead deer. And I rushed it. I should have just aimed a little bit higher and I'd have another good deer in my wall.
Could be worse. You could always be sitting there on your phone and look up and there's a giant deer. Have you ever had that happen before?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe
Yep.
that's what I was getting at. Let's hear it.
Actually, it was 2019. That same
Was it?
deer. I
It
remember
was the same deer?
it was the same deer. Now, it didn't cause me to like miss it, but I remember I was watching the Chiefs game. I was like, I got to get going, but it was getting close to halftime. They had a noon game. I believe it was November 10th. And I just kept watching. I'm like, okay, I got to go. Went, showered, rushed out there in the stand. I bet I wasn't there. He's right there. I mean, he was still a ways off.
Did you know that deer was out there?
I had pictures of him, but I hadn't seen him actually on that farm on that camera, which again, as I scouted more and more in the off season, I'm like, I need to have cameras in all these spots. But I probably hadn't had him since September. So I was like, and that was the second year move back. Anyway, I didn't give up hope. I'm like, whatever. It was close to town. It wasn't far. I didn't have a lot of hope, but I was like, I'm gonna go.
Didn't somebody talk you into sitting at that place or something?
I did have a buddy. He's like, dude, go put a camera back there. And I'd hunted it years before, like in high school. I was like, dude, there's nothing back there. Never has been, never will be. And in that year, I put a camera out. I'm like, whatever. And then, oh my gosh, I was like, holy crap. Of course, I didn't want to tell him that he was right. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to send him this. I'm just going to hear about it. I mean, I still got the deer to come in, but I was a little unprepared. It was kind of one of those, crap, he's right there. So I was like, that probably got my nerves, racing before they should have been. But as I looked up, I'm like, holy crap, that's that deer. And he actually started to walk off. And between me and him it was an old, like, washed out pond. So it kind of turned into a swamp, but the water had cut such a deep ditch over the years. Like, he didn't want to cross it. So I got him all fired up and he finally crossed it. And I was like, here he comes. And again, he took the trail, didn't make the best shot, but had I not been on my phone screwing around and been paying attention, maybe I would have had more time to kind of collect myself. Because at that time, he was probably only 80 yards away. So it was like, he's there, hurry up. You're already getting nervous. Might have been the same result, but I'm just as guilty as anybody. Sometimes long days in the stand, man, the phone is what saves you.
Been there. Isn't that the coolest feeling though? You could be sitting for hours and it's just so slow. You're not seeing jack crap. And either you're on your phone or just kind of staring down and you look up and he's just standing right there. You're like, where in the heck did he come from?
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, I'm sure there's been other times, and I'll even be sitting in the stand and like say, okay, get off your phone because you're going to miss something. Actually, this last fall, I had been in the stand 10 minutes and I was on my phone, just sat down. I probably wouldn't have shot that deer, but I tried to call him in just to get a better look. So it didn't really prevent me from getting a shot or anything. Again, focus on other things versus just sitting, watching, listening. And he came screaming down the CRP, must have got on a hot doe trail. So had he been a shooter, it might have screwed me just because I wasn't paying attention and I could have got his attention before he was, I don't know, 40 yards in front of me. But he never took the right trail, but still, I'm like, okay, that's why you got to stay off your phone. If that was a 200-inch deer and you missed your opportunity to get his attention before he got too close, you might have had a shot. So I'm just as guilty as anybody. I'm sure it'll happen again in the future and we'll have the same conversation. But
Man, I don't know. Maybe you're a little more spoiled as a kid than me, but I didn't get my first phone until 2007. I'd bow hunted 5, 6 years before that. I don't know what I did with my time out there. I'm sure I probably enjoyed it more.
yeah, I couldn't tell you what I did before cell phones. I mean, I had one in like junior high, but it was basic stuff. It wasn't all the technology we have now, but you probably just sat there bored out of your mind and actually paid attention.
Speaking of technology, how do you think hunting has evolved over the past 20 years? And you can elaborate on whatever you want. For example, like shotgun hunting, back where I'm from, it just has kind of dissipated, especially over the past 10 years. What are your thoughts on how hunting has evolved, the hunting landscape in general, and buying ground?
Well, I would say access is at an all-time low. I've never hunted a lot of public ground, but it seems like more and more people are buying farms solely for hunting purposes, whether they live in the state or not. So you have some of the best ground that's just sitting there for 2, 3, 4, 5 plus years. And it's just crazy the land prices. I remember when timber ground was like $100 an acre. Now I've seen some crazy numbers, 7, 8, 9,000 bucks an acre for timber ground.
Recreation.
And I'm thankful I have landowners and tenants that allow me private access. Of course, I respect their ground like it was my own. But I know a lot of folks have issues with, problems finding ground because it's a pay to play. You either have to lease, you have to buy it, and that's hard for the blue collar American to find any ground that someone just lets you hunt without 12 other people also being able to hunt that ground. So I don't know what to blame. I mean, you got all this social media, everybody's under pressure to shoot a big buck. You got all these TV shows. Of course, they're just doing their job. Everybody would love to get paid to hunt and do what they love to do, but I just say that's kind of getting out of control because you have more and more people that are being dislocated from where they've hunted forever because, hey, this guy's going to pay me $5-10 an acre. I'm not getting anything off you. So I think that's getting harder and harder is just the access, and it's just becoming a limited resource. Everybody wants to shoot a big buck, but where are they going to go? Everybody's been pushed onto public ground, and now that's getting even poorer and poorer quality, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think back to my younger years when I first started hunting, if there's the pressure there is now, but back home, I'm in a 2 mile section, and I kid you not, there's probably 6 tower blinds in that section. It's hard to go out and not have a hunter within eyesight. Gosh, there's got to be, I bet there's 3, 4 hunters per square mile in Iowa.
Well, I'm thinking back now, like, can you imagine probably the access you could have got 20 years ago if you're like, hey, can I bow hunt? Everybody just laugh at you like, you're going to go shoot a deer with a bow? Yeah, have at it. I don't care. And now it's like, no, because the technology's better. I think we have more resources for people to get better at hunting. So even the people that just rifle hunt, if they know or assume that you kind of know what you're doing, they don't want you in there potentially taking out the deer that they want to shoot. So, yeah, I just kind of wish I was 30 years old back in the early 2000s and had the knowledge that I do now, because you probably could have went about anywhere you wanted to, because yeah, there was hunting, but it's not advertised like it is now. I don't think it wasn't as popular. Gun hunting, the camaraderie, all that stuff was still big. Bow hunting, people like look at you like you're crazy. Like, yeah, good luck. That's not going to happen.
Even the thermal coyote hunting in the past 3 years, 3 years ago, you could go ask anybody. Go for it. I don't care. Get rid of them. Now there's so many people doing it where you can ask somebody and, oh, neighbor's doing that. So we're just going to keep you off of it so they can hunt it.
Yeah. Everything's becoming, in the hunting world, to me, whether it's fishing, mushroom hunting, waterfowl hunting, bird hunting, it's all almost becoming a pay to play game. I just feel like the heyday of that is gone. Like I said, I'm fortunate to be able to hunt some of the farms that I can hunt. I have great farmers and landowners that allow me access, but it definitely is a problem. It's how much you're going to pay me, or, go drop $1 million on a dream farm, which, yeah, maybe someday when I retire, but I'd rather not wait until I'm 60 and can go buy a farm, because I'd rather like to, enjoy it now.
Yeah, you can't blame the landowners. It's all supply and demand. If they can get the
Right.
money out of it, why not?
Sure. Yeah, I don't blame them one bit. I get it. If you don't hunt, you can make some extra income with today's prices of everything. I don't blame them one bit.
I was talking to Porter about this last week, and it just kind of came to mind. I don't know if it's because I kind of steer away from watching the hunting shows now, but do you feel like the attention has kind of gone away from that a little bit? 10 years ago, everybody's obsessed with whitetail freaks and whatever. and they still do some great things, but I don't feel like that kind of stuff's as popular anymore. But maybe it's just because I don't pay attention.
I would agree. I don't know if you've ever listened to the Hunter podcast. You ever listen to that one?
They've blown up the past couple years.
They have, but they bring this topic up a lot. And I agree. It's like the heyday was back in like the early 2000s. TV shows were big. Everybody wanted to go that route. And I still watch them because I just like to watch deer hunting, but I'm not as interested in and I get it. They have a 30-minute show. You have to cram basically a year or multi-year quest of a deer into 30 minutes, whether that's sheds, previous hunts. I seal the deal. It's basically, here's the deer, here they come, boom. So I'm not going to blame the people on TV because that's just what networks want. That's all they can give them. But I find myself honestly more finding all these YouTube shows that draw it out over an hour, 2 hours. Like, I want to know every piece of that story because I'm interested. I don't want to just see a kill shot. Or even some of these people that aren't, they're just average Joes that post their hunt on YouTube. I enjoy those because I feel more connected to that. Yeah, the video quality is not always the best, but I like that raw, hey, this is what happened. They go out, they film it. I'm like, I can relate to that. Or they draw it out over 2 or 3 episodes. Like, I want to hear the whole story and not just sitting over a food plot in a box blind and here he is type.
Yeah, the way I see it, all these big names, they kill big deer. They're good hunters. The fact of the matter is, that's not reality for 99% of the hunters. That's my goal of this podcast is keep it to the average Joes so people can actually relate to it instead of Hunter X who's killed 6 200-inch deer. Well, what percent of the hunting population is going to kill one 200-inch deer, let alone 6?
Right. I mean, I enjoy the guy that gets off work, films it. He's like, I just got off a shift, drove out there in their Chevy Cavalier, throw their freaking camo on, climb up, get it done on a giant. Like, I enjoy that because I'm like, I've done that before. I can relate to that. Maybe it was public. Maybe it was, hey, I've only got 30 acres to hunt. Like, they've struggled. It's taken a lot of work. They're just fitting in hunts when they can. So I'm not one of those video snobs where, oh, it wasn't perfect picture. Like, I could care less. Like, that dude spent his hard-earned money on a video camera that most of us, could afford versus these higher quality that I can't afford or I'm not going to spend the money on. And he took every bit of time that he had left in that day just to go kill that deer. And I can appreciate that. Like, you got to grind, man. And not that the bigger guys don't, because they can't show all that, but they do. Of course, they have more resources and stuff. Again, I'm not bashing them.
We'd all be doing the same thing.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, it's not all fairy tales. There's a lot of stuff that goes wrong. So we were talking about technology earlier. Before we wrap this up, what is one of the best purchases you've made towards hunting? It might have been a dumb purchase, but you enjoyed it. Something that just really kind of changed the game for you.
I mean, it's probably obvious. Like,
Sitka.
I do love my Sitka. And before anybody bashes it, I don't care
It's good.
about the narrative about it. By far the best windproof camouflage I've ever bought. Like, yes, it's expensive. I didn't buy it just to fit in.
So you bet your guy wears it.
He probably makes more money than we do. But no, honestly, it's the best windproof stuff I've ever bought. And I'm not going to buy it just to fit in or be part of this group or whatever. I'm sure there's other brands that have that same technology, but I'm not going to go spend $10,000 in camo just to try everything out. I tried some, I liked it, so I bought it. But I would say, I mean, it's probably too cliche, but I mean, cell cameras have been a game changer. Again, that was very instrumental in my Iowa bow kill this last fall. Think of the old days. If If I didn't have a cell camera, I might not have checked that camera for another week or two and be like, oh, yeah, I should have been here 2 weeks ago. I mean, whether you like them or not, they're legal. I mean, at least in Iowa and Missouri.
For now.
For now, I like that I don't have to intrude. Not that that bothers me that much because usually you're checking cameras at preseason, in times of the day when deer aren't going to be there. But it's just nice to be able to monitor an area and capitalize if you can. And they're not automatic. I mean, just because you get a picture of a deer doesn't mean they're going to be there. It just happened to work out this one time.
Or just because you have a camera out there doesn't mean you're getting pictures of all the deer.
Yeah. I mean, you probably had it happen. You thought you had it in a good spot. If you would have just had it 30 yards the other direction, pointed slightly different, who knows what you're missing. So it's not like you're just capturing everything that's going on.
It's hard to knock them because it's one of those things. I might be against baiting deer, but if baiting deer was legal in Iowa, it'd be dumb not to do it because everybody else is going to do it. Why would you put yourself at such a disadvantage by not using them?
If you don't do it, your neighbor is. So that's just part of the game. I don't agree with it personally, but again, if Missouri said you can bait deer and every one of your neighbors has a giant corn pile and year after year they're slaying giant bucks, I'm not going to let my ego get in the way of it. I just hope it never comes to that because I'd rather not, financially have to dump a giant pile of corn every time you want to go hunt. And I just think it takes the mission out of it. Like, I want to beat the deer at his own game. I don't want to have to lure him in with something that if it wasn't there, he might not have come by. It's my job to figure out his routine, his personality, and kill him that way versus over something like that.
Would you be pretty upset if they got rid of cell cameras?
No. No, I kind of miss the days of checking cards, but it's more of I'm older, I'm lazier. It's hot in the summertime. A lot of my spots, I've got to ride my e-bike 3/4 of a mile back. So no, it wouldn't affect me one bit. I would just say, you know what? I got to go check those cards. I'm too anxious. I got to see what's on it.
The cameras in general aren't necessarily just to make life easier and find bigger deer. It helps grow bigger deer because it gives you an opportunity to analyze a deer before they just show up on a split second. You have to make a decision. It kind of allows you to make decisions on pass or shoot before you actually see the deer.
And you can take inventory, and I think it helps you be more efficient because, yes, you can miss some stuff, but I had a farm this year where there just was nothing there. I could have wasted my time hunting a farm knowing or not knowing I was never going to see anything that I wanted to take. So I focused elsewhere. I mean, they're helpful in that too. Like, hey, got a lot of good deer, nothing great. I'm going to give that spot a rest and hunt elsewhere. So I think it makes you be more efficient with your time.
Definitely takes out the anticipation and the excitement, though.
It does. I mean, there's that argument too of some guys just went away from using cameras. Like the element of surprise is gone. What happened to just going out and seeing what you see, which I get that too. I kind of miss that. But at the same time, with 3 kids, a job that keeps me busy, I just don't have as much time as I used to. So I want to make the most of it. So cell cameras definitely help me do that versus, focusing my time where I think I'm going to have the best opportunity.
Just kind of have to keep up with the times. You either keeping with it or you're falling behind. Before we wrap this up, I like to ask my guests to share some embarrassment or hunts that went wrong. So fill us in if you got a story to share. Everybody has an embarrassing WTF moment, like, can't believe I just did that, or something just went terribly wrong.
I'm going to let you go first because I'm going to think on it a little bit.
I think the bee story is pretty funny.
Oh, yeah, we can go there.
The hornet.
Just tell me how you want to segue into it.
So if I recall, it seemed like there was one situation, I believe you're with Lance, where maybe you ran into a hornet's nest or something like that.
I did. Yeah. Lance and I met through work roughly 12 years ago. It was the first time I went down there for the weekend. Of course, I was just like, wow, this part of Iowa is awesome. Like, yeah, if you want to do deer stuff, like, I'm all about that. I love that process. He wanted to clear basically a walking lane to his stands, get all the shrubs and everything that makes noise when you walk to a stand out of the way. So I had my wicked saw, my hand saw. I'm like, this will be perfect. Does great with just thrashing, getting stuff out of the way. So I take the lead and I start hacking away. All of a sudden, I'm like, ah, damn it. Like,
Thorn.
he's like, well, I'm like, I don't know. Like, freaking hurt though. All of a sudden, I just start getting just hammered and I dropped the saw. And before I know it, I had hit I don't know what they're called, ground hornet, whatever. Hit the nest, the mother
Yellow
lode,
jackets.
yellow jackets, yeah. And they just hammered me. Of course, I had knee-high rubber boots on at the time. Had some get inside my boot, and one was just going to town on my calf. So I just take off running towards the creek. I mean, I was miserable. And after all the dust settled, of course, my thumb had been hit so many times, like it was numb for probably 4 hours. Lance is just laughing, and he's not standing that far away. I'm like, how are you not getting stung? Apparently, hornets know like who the perpetrator was. And we get down to the bottom of the hill. I was like, dude, you're not gonna believe this. He's like, what? I'm like, my saw is still laying right over that hornet's nest. So we went back, I think the next day, let everything settle down, and we kind of peeked the ridge, and I just see my saw sitting there. Of course, I can see all the hornets just kind of crawling over it. I'm like, this is stupid. Like, I don't
I
even
need
want
my
it. Like,
saw.
yeah, they can just keep it at this point. I didn't want to mess with it. So I took off sprinting, tried to grab it, missed it. I eventually got it, but I will never forget that pain. If you've never been stung by hornets, it's a different level of pain. I mean,
A wasp sting hurts, but I ran into yellow jackets once. I was trying to clear a spot in front of a trail camera by going forward and backwards on the ranger. I thought I was a thorn. I'm like, that hurt. Next thing I know, I started getting stung all over. I could not get out of there fast enough.
yeah,
Apparently, I forgot to close the door on the camera and it got soaked with water and ruined. That was some of the worst pain I've ever been in.
they're relentless, and I'm pretty sure once they sting you enough, or maybe once, I think they just die. I don't know. It's like they
Doesn't
know they're
seem
gonna
like it.
die. It's because there's so freaking many of them, but like they do not quit. They will stay there until you smash the living crap out of them. But that's probably the worst pain I've had in a while. And it wasn't just one sting. Like I just got swarmed. And I think the one that really topped it off was the one inside my boot because at the time, like I'm frantic. I don't know what's going on. It's inside your boot. I mean, you're just running for your life. But
I had a welt the size of a basketball, diameter of a basketball on my side from those bastards.
yeah, I'll never forget it. I have not trimmed any trails for Lance since. He got a good kick out of it, but I'll never forget that. It's one of those things I might not remember tomorrow, but I will definitely remember that moment because the first and ever encounter I've ever had with hornets, and it was bad.
For all the listeners, if you're not up to date on your wasp and hornets, if they come from a tree or like a hornet's nest in the whatever, maybe your back shed, it'll hurt. If they come from the ground, you better run because
Yeah.
it's going to really hurt. And it's not usually just one.
Not a mud dauber. Now, I think there are some hornets that do create those pretty cool hives, with the gray, papery hive and
You know,
trees. I don't know if they're the same. I have no
I
idea.
think it's a paper wasp,
Is it a paper wasp? Okay.
something like that. The yellow hornets, man.
Yeah. Either way, one of the worst experiences of my life, which that's probably a good thing because there's a lot worse things that can happen to you. But I've been pretty conscious every time I've been over there since because I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going through that again.
At least I was on a ranger when it happened, but I was like tucked between a couple of trees. So I'd like back up, go forward to like get out, and then just haul ours 45 miles an hour, whereas you had to run.
It's kind of one of those like it wouldn't have been probably that bad had I not dropped the saw and had to go back to the scene of the crime. Like all I could think was this is going to happen again. But recovered the saw, still have it to this day, and every time I pull it out, that's all I think of.
I feel like, man, I still haven't put a camera on that same tree. I'm not putting one on that tree again. No way.
No, ain't worth it, man.
I texted the landlord saying, "Hey, I think I left the door open on my camera." It's like, sorry, dude, I'm not touching it
Yeah,
because I told him what happened.
yeah, that'll.
It's not all. It's not all roses and fairy tales in the hunting world.
No, and I don't know if they leave scars, but if I knew exactly where it stung me, I can kind of guess. I don't know if it would or not, but I doubt it. Not very deep. Not
Probably
very.
one of those memories you'll never forget.
No, absolutely not.
But anyways, man, enjoyed having you on. Good catching up. We'll have to do a bro camp episode one of these days.
Absolutely. We'll see you probably at the Deer Classic here in about a month and a weekish.
Too fast, man. I got a lot of stuff to get ready.
Looking forward to that, and I'm sure there'll be a good crowd. There usually is.
I think they say about 20,000 people.
So yeah, hopefully they stop by and get them hooked up with the app.
Fingers crossed. At least get some good feedback, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man. We'll see you in a few weeks.
Sounds good.
You bet. Bye.
See ya.